Now, KCAU 9 News starts with your forecast first.
Good afternoon, Siouxland. We've seen that the river levels are still extremely high across the region as we're taking a look out from the Sioux City riverfront, and we'll see that conditions across the area are still showing the flooding with major and moderate impacts with river gauges that are still listed across the region to be impacted. But what we'll be keeping an eye on is to our south, which I'll let you know more about as we see that water trending south as it finally flows down the river. As KCAU 9 News starts right now.
We are Siouxland proud. This is KCAU 9 News at 5.
And thanks for joining us on this Monday. I'm Tim Seaman. Sophie will join me momentarily. The Sioux City metro area once again on high alert after the Big Sioux River has crested, now taking out an entire neighborhood as well as roads and bridges. The latest here and from around Siouxland, all in our top story today at 5 o'clock. As with other recent flooding events, South Dakota seems to be hardest hit. Just north of Sioux City, McCook Lake in North Sioux City has exceeded its flood levels. That happened last night. Roads and homes, in fact, washed away. Everyone told to evacuate from their properties. And that's where we start this afternoon. KCAU 9 News reporter Alyssa Tatch has been in the McCook Lake area all afternoon assessing the damage. Good afternoon, Alyssa.
That's right, Tim. The homes on the northern end of McCook Lake were hit the hardest with the flooding waters. And as you can see behind me, the houses at the start of North Shore Drive were hit as well. North Sioux City Fire Chief estimates over 100 homes have been hit and roughly 25 houses have been destroyed. Fire officials say they started preparations at 9 yesterday and have been responding to medical emergencies and rescuing residents from their homes after being flooded in. Officials are asking residents to evacuate when they are told and to be patient as they wait for things to slow down.
We're hoping it'll be over with, in Wednesday or Thursday. The water is receding. It's definitely slowed down. But there's a lot of water it still needs to go through.
It picked up very rapidly to within about 30 minutes. At that point, we were already getting ready to deploy swiftwater rescue teams because we knew we were going to have an issue. A lot of people were able to get out of their homes by themselves, get their belongings, get in a car, and get out of that area. It came to a point where North Shore got so inundated that we started deploying boats.
North Sioux residents needing a place to evacuate can find shelter at the Tyson Event Center in Sioux City. From McCook Lake, Alyssa Tatch, KCAU 9 News.
All right, Alyssa, thanks for that. Not far from where Alyssa is standing, flooding is impacting a major piece of infrastructure. Roads around Union County are closed due to encroaching waters or have been washed away altogether. Around 11 last night, the swollen Big Sioux River caused the middle portion of the rail bridge here to collapse. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem earlier today saying that even once the flooding waters do recede, the true scope of the damage will finally be revealed.
We have damaged roads, we have damaged bridges. We did lose a Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad bridge. That is the main bridge going into Iowa that a lot of commodities and different materials move on throughout the state, and between us and those, that river collapsing and going down the Big Sioux last night was a big loss for us. That'll impact us for many, many months to come.
KCAU 9 has reached out to BNSF Rail and a spokesperson telling us that they had not been using the bridge due to flood conditions. The company has rerouted all train traffic for the time being. Inside Sioux City, the Riverside neighborhood seems to be seeing the most significant flooding damage, and that's where we find Sophie Erber this afternoon. She's on the riverfront with the very latest on the situation there. Docks have been washed away, and the situation along that area continues to be very difficult. Sophie?
That's right, Tim. Thank you. Yes, as you can see, those docks you just mentioned right behind me, they washed away around this time last night. I'll step aside here. You can see we've seen all sorts of debris floating down the river, mattresses, coolers, odd pieces of structures. And again, police are asking people to stay away from this area. Too many people coming in and out of the park. And as you mentioned, it is unsafe with such rapidly moving water, and the water levels still expected to potentially rise rise. It's an ever-changing situation. So again, officials want us to remind viewers at home, please do stay away from the area if you don't have to be here. In fact, residents of this neighborhood were asked last night to evacuate their homes because of the rising water. That happened yesterday evening. Some of those homes also lost power. People that are displaced by the floodwaters or don't feel safe while the water is still potentially rising, they can find shelter tonight at the Tyson Event Center. That is open right now and will remain open, again, as long as people need it. Tyson says that the assistance will be available as long as people need it. There's no timetable for when that will run out.
There will be a place to sleep. There will be meals provided through the Red Cross and the Salvation Army. We're working with our Parks Department to create some family areas just so it's not people just sitting, waiting, wondering, but activities, though, that to help them with their children. This could be a pretty dramatic time for everyone, and the last thing you want is families that are suffering, and so we're going to try to do what we can to make it as comfortable as possible.
Now, pets are also allowed at the Tyson Event Center, so if you have a pet and you're trying to leave your home tonight, you absolutely can take them there. Again, that will remain open as long as it's needed. We'll actually be back here in the area at 6 o'clock tonight. We will speak with someone from one of the crews that helped to build that temporary levee set up just across on the South Dakota side of this river. You'll hear from him on how that experience was yesterday, putting that wall up as quickly as possible, and also an update on how that's holding tonight. For now, I'll send it back to you there in the studio, Tim. Sophie Erber reporting live in the Riverside community of Sioux City for KCAU 9.
All right, thanks, Sophie. And as with much of Siouxland, officials here in Sioux City continue to pay close attention to the river levels. They're also, however, being prepared for what is the unexpected, of course. This morning, we had a chance to check with Sioux City Fire Marshal Mark Asoff. He tells us that the Big Sioux has stabilized and is expected to hold its current level. City crews have helped, so far, 17 Riverside residents evacuate their homes, and they're actively working to keep the floodwaters at bay.
The city has deployed many pumps through the area, but unfortunately, we just can't keep up with a river that is flowing at that pace with that much water. We don't anticipate the entire area of Riverside. It's going to be contained to the pockets of those lowest areas.
And officials continue to stress that folks need to stay out of the Riverside neighborhood until further notice so that rescue workers and other emergency personnel can do their jobs. Strongly discouraging traffic as well because the water that's in the road, if it moves, it creates dangerous conditions. Also video from Jefferson, South Dakota earlier today. The town protected from the worst case scenario by a temporary levee that was built by volunteers yesterday. And folks from Jefferson, South Dakota had to find alternate routes as Interstate 29 is closed in several places. Exit 2 all the way to exit 26 at Vermilion. That's all closed. It is still not clear, though, when I-29 might reopen, probably exit by exit, perhaps, as Chief Meteorologist Victor Perez joins me now for a quick update. And the news that some of these waterways have started to stabilize and have crested comes as very good news.
Yes, it's going to be much needed in the region because we'll finally start to see these rivers beginning to drop over the next few days, but it will be a slow process. You'll see the river gauge over in the Missouri River at Sioux City is going to be dropping over the next 4 days, as we'll be seeing it drop a few feet each time. A big concern still, obviously, the river gauge in the Big Sioux River. We'll see that by Haywarden after reaching the record-shattering level of 44 feet. We'll be dropping back to the previous record over the next 48 hours as well, and then we'll be seeing it decreases. Rock Valley will also be dropping to moderate stages in the next 48 hours, but we'll be keeping an eye on the river gauge forecast as some storms are impacting our south later on. Tim?
Okay, Victor, thanks. We'll check back. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds is scheduled to make the rounds in northwest Iowa today, checking on flood damages and improvements, and that includes Cherokee, where the flooding started way last week. Folks there are just waiting for the water to disappear. That's where we find KCAU 9 reporter Tyler Euchner. He's awaiting the governor, asking her about Siouxland's recovery effort, as well as here in Sioux City. What is the update on the conditions this afternoon, though, Tyler?
Thanks, Tim. I'm currently here in Cherokee, where last week it was hit with flooding. And since arriving here roughly about an hour ago, I've seen homes, I've seen businesses all underwater, with some even trying to prepare for the worst. And I've even seen something a little bit funny, which is some kayakers even going through the streets. It was quite funny to see, actually. Now, I was here yesterday, and the flooding does seem to be going down, but portions of the roads are probably going to be remaining closed for quite some time. I can't really say how long, but I'm guessing not anytime soon. Now, Kim Reynolds is expected to be here, just like you said, Tim, in Cherokee in a little bit. And I'm going to be talking about what her plans are not only for Cherokee, but for Sioux City. And we'll have that coming up at 6. But for now, I'm here in Cherokee, and I will be back for the 6. Tyler Euchner, KCAU 9 News.
All right, Tyler, thanks for that. The city of Correctionville is the latest area to be closed to non-residents. All access into Correctionville now limited to residents-only. Checkpoints are in place and will be staffed by law enforcement. Roads in and out of town there, including Highway 20, with overrun from those floodwaters. A curfew will be in place again from 9:30 tonight until 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. During the curfew hours, there will be no re-entry allowed, and that's even for residents of the community. These actions are being implemented, we're told, for the safety and security of the residents of Correctionville. The speed of that floodwater that inundated the community still puzzling residents 24 hours later.
You get any floods up north, Cherokee, any of those up north, the rivers start coming out, it will get here eventually. We just never think it would get this far.
Never ever seen anything like this before. I think we've well surpassed our record so far, and from what I'm seeing, it's still coming up a little bit, but kind of hanging in there for now. So
Baruch is advising anyone expecting to drive to Correctionville yet to please not do that. A reminder that that community is now closed to everyone except its residents. Well, shelters in Spencer are helping hundreds of people there still looking for help after losing their homes in floodwaters. We'll take a closer look at the actions there today coming up. But first, let's check back in with Victor.
And folks, I'll be letting you know about cresting in the region, conditions getting cooler, and potential end-of-week rain, all with your 9 on 9 after the break.
You're watching KCAU 9 News with Sophie Erber and Chief Meteorologist Victor Perez. This is KCAU 9 News at 5. And now with Siouxland's most accurate forecast, Chief Meteorologist Victor Perez.
Well, we've talked a lot about what's happening here. This is a weather event, a water event that stretches all the way into Minnesota, with outside of Mankato today, a dam breaking there, creating a very dangerous situation there. Of course, the water that we've seen come in so quickly, so much. Missouri River behind us, though, still is holding the water outside the banks, except for the low-lying areas.
Yeah, we'll be seeing that this will start to impact some of our southern communities, actually, which is going to be the big problem. We'll see river flood warnings extending quite across the region as we take a look out from the Missouri River. We're taking a look out from the Ho-Chunk Center with those waters that are over the river banks and into South Sioux City. We'll see that currently temperatures are at 95 degrees, but we feel like 111 degrees. So very awful times to be seeing such high humidity values, because we've seen that many folks have been looking for shelter and just to be safe from the river flooding that's been occurring to the north, and instead they're having to deal with the high heat that we're also having compound the issues and affect more folks. We'll see river floods are expected to continue until 7 in the morning later on Friday. So these flood warnings are going to be in effect for the week going forward, as we see river gauges are still impacted across the area. We'll see that much of them, especially closer towards the Big Sioux River and the Little Sioux River, are showing that they are in the major threat levels, but they'll be dropping to moderate and minor as the next few days advance. But of course, we're still going to be dealing with this as we're dealing with the high heat across the area as well, with temperatures in the 90s. Currently 93 degrees in Yankton, 97 in Norfolk, and we'll see that out to our east, 93 in Sac City, and then 101 in Tacoma. I believe Norfolk also got to 100 earlier, but they've since been going downwards as humidity values are reported in the 70s across the area. So with such high humidity, we'll see that heat index values have been pushed up well above 100 degrees for many communities. We'll see Storm Lake at 130. 113. 111 in Omaha, and Denison was also reporting that they were well above 100 degrees. We had to get an accurate reading, so we're waiting on that one. But we'll see that there is excessive heat warnings across central Siouxland extending to the south. Basically, all the areas impacted by the flooding are also being impacted by how hot we've been feeling, and we haven't gotten much of a respite, with breezes still flowing out from the southeast, still bringing in the slightly warmer conditions as we see them over 10 miles per hour across the region, with a radar that thankfully has been clear. No more rain in the region, but we'll be keeping an eye on it because we're expecting some more showers and storms to be developing through the overnight hours, which we'll see here on the Stormcast with a few sprinkles trying to move into the Lake Andes area through the overnight into the morning hours tomorrow, but they begin to dissipate a little bit. But we're still seeing some showers out there as we see that warm front finally recede across the region. We'll still be warm on Tuesday, but we'll start to cool off as some showers and storms develop in the wake of it, pushing to our east with the development favored out to our south, which will be very problematic as we've already seen that the Blair River has, the Missouri River by Blair has still not crested. So we'll be keeping an eye on that because that could be adding up to an inch, which you'll see with the rain accumulation expected in the region going forward as heat index across the area will finally be cooling off in the region as we see a drop off for Tuesday that brings us down into the 80s, and we'll see that we still feel like the 90s through the afternoon, and we'll be feeling close to 100 degrees, especially to our south. But then Tuesday evening, we finally see much of the area dropping into the 60s, which will be a much needed cool down as we'll finally start to feel a little bit better out across the region. Now, currently, the overnight temperatures are favored to be in the low 70s as we see a couple of spotty showers, and you might catch an isolated storm as temperatures tomorrow will be rising back up into the low 90s, a big improvement from the near triple-digit mark that much of Siouxland has been dealing with today, as humidity values will also be dropping as we see that temperatures are in the 90s and 80s and then 70s, but those 70s do come with more showers and storms popping up in the region, as we'll see that afterwards conditions are expected to be a little bit more temperate, but we're still dealing with quite a few rainy days, Tim, so I know that's what folks really don't want to be hearing at this time.
Yeah, that's a bad situation. We'll hope that those don't last long if they do come, and that the areas that have the most water standing right now perhaps are not hit by that. But you make another good point as well, Victor, and that's the heat and humidity. With everybody that's out trying to help, you have to be careful.
Yeah, you got to be careful. You got to stay hydrated and don't take a break, rest in some shade. Right. Make sure that you're taking all the necessary steps to avoid that heat.
It'll creep up on you in a hurry, that's for sure. Thanks, Victor. Well, still to come, all of northwest Iowa, of course, has been impacted by so much rain. That includes the Iowa Great Lakes, where conditions got bad yet last week. We'll update the damage done there at Westlake coming up. But before that, it's been a couple of days now since Spencer went underwater. How shelters there are filling up as folks work to get back to their homes. We'll have the details next. Welcome back. When a major disaster strikes, it's not uncommon for people to be displaced from their homes. In Spencer, where many people are currently displaced, they're able to take advantage of two shelters now. One on the north side, which is in a former shopping mall. The other at the other end of town, in fact, all the way to the south, past the floodwaters. Both of those centers located in churches there in Spencer. Flooding Little Sioux River divides that community. There were hundreds displaced from those homes. Now the Spencer Chamber of Commerce director is leading an effort to make sure everyone has a place to stay and eat.
We're actually in the process of working with Red Cross, and we will start transitioning that over to them. Both the, the tracking of individuals that are at those facilities, and then also making sure those facilities are equipped with what they need, and then working with Red Cross to get those individuals into more permanent locations. And what that is at this point, I don't know yet.
And as the community waits to be able to get back into those neighborhoods and do massive cleanup, the mayor telling us that there's still no total on how many homes were damaged exactly, or how many will be able to be cleaned up and used again. We'll continue to follow along there. Last week we told you about the flooding and wind damage at Pillsbury Point on West Lake Okoboji. The heavy rains over the weekend made things worse. Part of a bank at Pillsbury Point has now been washed into that lake by the heavy rains. The damaged and flooded docks are still there, but the boats that were once there calling it home for the summer have now been moved probably indoors, but to safety. Pillsbury Point is the smallest state park in Iowa, and part of that park is a sidewalk which allows people to walk along the front of those private lake homes. Much work to come in the Iowa Great Lakes as well. Well, closer to home and away from the flooding damage, local police are asking for your help after several vehicles are damaged in a public parking lot. We'll let you know who they're looking for when we come back. Welcome back. Away from the flood situation across Siouxland, local police this afternoon asking for the community's help in identifying a suspect that damaged 13 vehicles. The damage taking place on the 3rd floor of the Martin Luther King parking ramp about 10:45 today. That suspect appears to be a man with dark hair, a white shirt, khaki shorts, and black shoes. We say anyone with information should call the Sioux City PD, the number there on your screen, 279-6440, or Crime Stoppers. That number is well listed there, 258-TIPS. In Maryland, the ship that crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge nearly 3 months ago has set sail. Began moving this morning out of the Baltimore harbor with 4 tugboats just before 8:30 local time. It's headed to Virginia, where the remaining containers will be removed and more repairs will be made to the ship. In March, that ship lost power and crashed into support columns, causing the bridge to collapse. 6 construction workers were killed in that accident. We'll have another check of the evening forecast when we come right back.
Well, Siouxland, we're going to be seeing temperatures in the low 70s and a few spotty showers, but that excessive heat warning still in effect for the next couple hours. So make sure you're taking breaks and drink plenty of water.
All right, Victor, thanks. And thank you for being with us at 5. We're back live in the field at 6. In the meantime, World News is next.